On November the 24th, 1992, the Queen called it her Annus Horribilis, a disastrous year. But behind palace walls, a deeper struggle was already underway. On one side, the world's most famous monarch, sworn to centuries of silence and duty. On the other, Diana, breaking protocol to embrace the suffering and steal the people's hearts. This is the true silent war that tore at the monarchy's foundation. What forced Britain's unbreakable crown to crack wide open? On November 24, 1992, Queen Elizabeth II stood before an audience at London's Guildhall and addressed a nation already unsettled by a year of royal misfortune. With her usual composure, she described 1992 as her Annus Horribilis, a phrase borrowed from a sympathetic letter that would become etched into British memory. Fires had ravaged Windsor Castle just days earlier. Marital scandals and separations had filled the headlines. Yet even as she acknowledged the pain, the Queen remained careful, revealing only what duty allowed. She spoke of scrutiny and criticism as necessary, healthy even, for any public institution. And she asked that it come with a touch of gentleness, good humour, and understanding. The Queen's words carried weight because they exposed just enough vulnerability to remind the public that behind the crown stood a person. Still, she never named names, never aired grievances. Privacy was not just a preference, but a shield, essential to the monarchy's survival. The royal family's troubles, she implied, belonged behind palace walls, not in the glare of public debate. The speech drew a standing ovation from the 500 guests, but outside the hall, the appetite for royal privacy was already waning. The Queen's restraint, her refusal to let emotion intrude on duty, had defined her reign. In that moment, however, the world glimpsed the cost of such stoicism. As the monarchy clung to its traditions, a new kind of royal was waiting in the wings, ready to challenge the old rules with a very different kind of intimacy. In April 1987, Princess Diana stepped into the Middlesex Hospital's AIDS ward, surrounded by uncertainty and fear. AIDS was a word whispered with dread, and even doctors wore gloves to avoid touching patients. Diana ignored every warning. She reached out her bare hand and clasped the fingers of a man dying from the virus. Cameras flashed. The image traveled around the world, a princess unguarded, breaking a barrier that medicine and monarchy had both left untouched. That handshake shattered a stigma, sending a message louder than any speech. Diana's compassion was not distant or ceremonial. She sat beside the sick, listened to their stories, and made eye contact when so many turned away. She did not just visit hospitals. She hugged children with HIV, comforted grieving families, and championed causes others avoided. Crowds began to gather wherever she went. Newspapers started calling her the People's Princess, a title she never claimed but never denied. Her empathy became her power. While the palace clung to tradition, Diana built a new kind of loyalty, one rooted in vulnerability, not protocol. She opened her life to the public, letting them see her struggles and her heartbreak. Every gesture, every tear, every act of kindness drew people closer. Diana's rise was not orchestrated by advisors or choreographed by royal handlers. It was built on moments like that handshake, simple, human, impossible to ignore. In the years that followed, her popularity soared, eclipsing even the Queen's. Diana's emotional honesty became a force the monarchy could neither control nor contain. The crown's shield of privacy had met its match. A princess who made compassion her claim to legitimacy. 23 million people tuned in on the night of November 20th, 1995. Across Britain, living rooms fell silence as Princess Diana stared into the camera and said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." In that instant, the rules of royal privacy cracked. The confession was not whispered behind palace doors. It was broadcast to nearly half of the adult population of the UK. Phones rang, headlines blazed, and by morning, the story had circled the globe. Newspapers rushed to print with her words in bold, while radio hosts replayed the moment on an endless loop. Diana's voice, raw and unfiltered, exposed the pain the monarchy had spent decades hiding. She spoke of betrayal, loneliness, and the struggle to find her place in a family that prized silence over honesty. For millions, the interview was not just news, it was a rupture. The woman once seen as shy and sheltered now commanded the nation's attention, outshining the very institution she had married into. That night, the monarchy's secrets belonged to the public, and Diana's candour became a rallying cry. In May 2021, a long-buried truth surfaced. The Dyson Report, commissioned by the BBC, revealed that Martin Bashir had secured his Panorama interview with Princess Diana through calculated deception. Bashir commissioned forged bank statements, created by a freelance designer, to convince Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, that members of Diana's inner circle were being paid to spy on her. The false documents suggested payments from companies linked to the security services, painting a picture of betrayal and surveillance. Bashir presented these forgeries to Earl Spencer in the summer of 1995, weaving a story of secret plots and hidden enemies. Spencer's notes from those meetings, released decades later, captured the paranoia and mistrust sown by Bashir's claims. While Diana herself later wrote that she had not seen the documents directly, the atmosphere they created shaped her sense of isolation and vulnerability. The BBC's own 1996 investigation failed to uncover the truth, accepting Bashir's denials and leaving the deception hidden for years. Only the Dyson Report, published more than 2 decades after the broadcast, confirmed that the interview's access had been won through calculated deceit. In early December 1995, the Queen set aside her customary reserve and acted with unmistakable authority. After days of private deliberation, she wrote separate letters to both Prince Charles and Princess Diana. The wording was formal, the intent unmistakable. An early divorce was now not just preferred, but necessary. The Queen's view, she wrote, was fully supported by the Duke of Edinburgh. The decision followed consultations with Prime Minister John Major and the Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, each voice reinforcing the gravity of the moment. The Queen's message landed with the weight of a command, though the palace would later soften the language in its public statement. Charles responded in writing, agreeing to the course set out by his mother. Diana's reply was less immediate, her position complicated by the public sympathy she now commanded. The letters themselves were never released, their exact phrasing sealed in the royal archives, but the palace confirmed their existence on December 20th. Behind closed doors, the monarchy's private power moved swiftly, bringing a turbulent royal marriage to the brink of legal finality. For the Queen, this was duty in its purest form, decisive, unyielding, and carried out away from the world's gaze. On August 31st, 1997, the world awoke to news that seemed impossible. Princess Diana was dead, killed in a car crash in a Paris tunnel. The shock rippled outward, freezing London in a hush that grew heavier with each hour. Outside Kensington Palace, flowers multiplied by the thousands, carpeting the gates in colour and grief. Strangers wept openly in the streets. The pain was raw, public, and uncontainable. A nation mourning not just a princess, but the sense of comfort she brought. In those first days, the monarchy's silence felt deafening. The Queen remained at Balmoral, following protocol, protecting her grandsons from the glare. But the distance, so familiar in royal tradition, now felt like abandonment. Newspapers ran headlines questioning where the Queen was, demanding a sign that the Crown understood the country's heartbreak. Approval ratings for the monarchy dropped to 58%, the lowest in decades. For many, Diana's warmth had become the measure of what royalty could mean. Prime Minister Tony Blair spoke for millions when he called her the People's Princess, a phrase that caught the world's breath and refused to let go. In the days that followed, the institution faced a reckoning. Duty and dignity alone no longer seemed enough. The cost of emotional distance had never been so clear. Royal silence and public vulnerability still collide in every headline about the monarchy. As trust in institutions faces constant scrutiny, the lessons from this rift echo today. Authority without empathy erodes its own foundation. In the shadows of power, the cost of being heard can never be forgotten.